This is Local Live with Steve and Carolyn. We're here with author Larry Benjamin in East Falls. And Larry, how are you today?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing? It's a beautiful day out there. I'm so excited to kind of hang out with you guys for a while. You're always so much fun.
I couldn't find any celery, so I used a sweet pea.
Does this ruin the bloody Larry or enhance it? I can't tell. Yeah.
Cheers!
Cheers! Woo!
Well, that was weird. Beef broth.
Wow.
All right, so it's actually delicious, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Aw. All right, so what do we do now with the background?
All right, I'll move
So, I was trying to do it. Yee.
Oh.
All right, so I creep here.
Okay.
There we go. Look at
Nice.
that.
All right. So,
Here's again.
yeah, and everything's good with Stanley. All good there?
Yeah, we're all good. You know, it's a lot of togetherness, right? Because I'm home all the time. He's home all the time.
Wow. Yeah.
Thank God it's a big house.
It is a nice big house, too.
It is. It is.
It is. It's looking pretty this spring. You had a lot of bloom.
Oh, yeah, we've been working in the yard because what else is there to do, right?
Now, do you have to, when you're working, do you find that you can accomplish as much as you normally do in a lot less time because it's online shit?
Yes, and there's less distractions.
Nice, right?
The downside of that is I work longer hours
Hmm.
because everything is now here, right? So I can start earlier and I can work later, or I pop back on after dinner, or I worked yesterday because I can knock this out in a couple of hours, right? So that's been my big struggle, is trying to create that balance and not working more than I already was. But
Sure.
Yeah. And with your writing, that's one of the things I was going to get into, is that silver lining thing where you said you had sort of more time to do it, and you limited yourself to about 3 hours. And sort of the fear of, not silver lining, but more the fear is like, hey, what if this gets bad? I want to get this novel finished.
right.
And you had it going for a year, and then all of a sudden in 7 weeks, you cranked it out.
I think I had talked about how fear is a powerful motivator, and because it's my fourth novel, for me, it was the one that had culminated everything I've learned over the last 7 years with all of those books. So this, for me, is my personal masterpiece, and it was just really important that I get it out, right? Plus, it's very different to what I've written before. And I swear I went through this thing where I was going to be terrified I was going to get COVID and die before I finished the book. And so my app...
You sound like
you know, whatever. And so I realized that my editor, who's also my publisher, knows me really well, and we're at the point where when she edits my stuff, she can actually do my voice.
Yep.
My thought was if I could get it to the point where it's ready to submit, and I died, she could actually finish the book and get it published.
That's a grim but positive thought.
It was grim, but it kept me writing and it kept me moving on to do what I wanted to do, right? So.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, so hold on. So this is the new one that I have not read.
Correct. This one won't be out till later next year.
So how is this different from the other stuff that you've written?
What do you mean?
You said this was different from the other stuff you've written?
Oh, right. So, did you read the last one? What was it? In His Eyes?
Yes. And that was the one that I read backwards, because I read the first copy and you gave me the wrong ending, remember? And you were talking about something and I was like, what? And then you're like, oh shit. Oh, and then I had to read it again. So now I have I think I have two stories in my head.
Oh my God, I totally forgot that I did.
Right?
The alternate ending.
And then you're talking about it, I'm all like, because you had a sadder ending. The first ending was a little different. Anyway, so go ahead.
So that one, there was the story, and then it was told from 4 different points of view.
Yes. That was the Gatsby one.
Right. Excuse me?
That was the Gatsby one, wasn't it?
No, the Gatsby one is the one that's out now. That was The Sun, the Earth, and the Moon. I think you read it as the version in What Binds Us.
I got you. Okay.
That was the first one, and then we released it again in November.
With a different title?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
We went back to the original title.
Okay.
The original title was The Sun, the Earth, and the Moon, which when you read the book, that's the image that's used all the time. But the original publisher, Karina, didn't like the title. So they made me change it. Yeah. And I never liked it. So once I got the rights back, the rights revert back after 7 years. So when we decided to republish it, I just went back to the original title.
And that was, and so which one is In His Eyes is the sun, the moon, and the stars now?
No.
Which one's the one that changed? Sorry. Which one's the
I
read them all. What's this
right.
one?
So the one that's
it
Damaged Angels, that's the short stories.
Yes.
You gotta hold it.
Right. Oh wait, I've got them all here. So In His Eyes was the second one.
That's a great graphic, by the way.
Oh my God, we worked so hard on this.
I love that graphic. The eye. Oh.
The guy is in Canada, maybe.
Mhm.
He did the cover for the break. Yeah, and then if you look at, do you have the book?
Yeah. It's not on me right now, but I had the graphic.
Because inside his eye is some imagery.
Yes, I noticed that. I was
the
zooming
story.
into
I
it.
love this cover. So this was the second one. This is the one that came out in November, which was originally What Binds Us, which I think you read electronically. Yes.
Yes, that's
So
it.
it gets confusing.
I like that name. I like your title better.
Thank you. So do I.
Yeah.
And there's I have to send you this one, or you can stop by and pick it up. Because to tie it together, there's a great opening quote from Shakespeare. Wait, what is it? Oh, his face was as the heavens, and therein stuck a sun and moon, which kept their course and lighted the little the earth.
There it is.
Mhm.
My editor actually found that.
Oh,
Oh my God, this is so perfect.
it's so perfect.
That is great.
So that's why I trust her so much to take care of my work, right?
Sure.
So with the In His Eyes thing, then that kind of segues into.
Well, I want to.
Oh, you want to?
Can I take a small thing and this is just zoom us? Is that how I do it? Is that how I change our background?
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh, that's a good one.
How do I do that?
Oh, that looks so cool behind
Yeah,
you.
right. And that's you
Right.
already got it. Just click out of it.
All right. Q.
Wow. That is really cool.
Yep. That
So
is better.
anyway.
That's better, isn't it?
Ooh.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
But it's
So with that book, I wanted to experiment with telling a story. But because you know how they always say there's always two sides to every story, and typically there's three, right? There's yours, mine, and the truth.
yeah.
So I wanted to write this story, and then within the story, each of the four characters tells the story from their perspective, or brings kind of their thinking and how they saw it, even though it was a single experience. Everybody experienced it differently. So that was my first time of kind of doing this whole thing where four people are actually giving their own reaction to a story that you kind of read independently, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a new one, which is called Excellent Sons. It's actually inspired in a way by my brother, my younger brother, who's the excellent son. He's like the good son, like he does everything perfectly. He's just a great son. And so watching what his life has been like in terms of the way he related to my parents, the way he took care of my dad when he was dying, the way he takes care of our mom now, like he's just this excellent son, right? So it's the concept of what makes an excellent son and what does that person's life really look like, right? So I've got the two main characters are two teenage half Asian kids, and their age, they could have been anything, right? But you don't see a lot of Asian folks in gay literary fiction, right?
Totally don't.
So I thought, and really, it doesn't really matter what their race was, and we never quite figure out what the other half is, because really it's irrelevant, right? So there's this kind of story where it's intertwining points of view. So they take turns telling the story, but each of them is telling the story from his perspective. And then it was really interesting to watch two intertwined voices, and then the point of view alternates as you go through.
Mm-hmm.
But what makes this one really different is within the book, for various reasons, which ties into the overall story, is an erotic retelling of Pinocchio. So, I had so much fun writing a fairy tale, right?
I can only imagine. Oh my God, in your hands. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it becomes really erotic, obviously, right? So, and Pinocchio's nose doesn't grow, but you know, whatever. And it allowed me to do some things like, in Pinocchio, there's a fairy, right? So I reintroduced this fairy concept, but the fairy is redefined as a non-binary person. And kind of talking through what does it really mean to be non-binary, right? And why it's important, and pronouns and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I had so much fun with that.
Oh my goodness.
And y'all are the first to hear about it.
It sounds great. No, it does. Oh my God. So yeah, did you play the fairy tale straight, like straight face? Did you play it like is it funny? Is it snarky? It's kind of both, right? And it just launches off reality.
right? So the intro to that piece talks about, I'm just going to tell you the story, believe it or don't believe it.
Okay.
Right? And some of it seems really believable, but then some of it launches into this kind of alternate thing where, well, it kind of sort of could be, but then it's like, that can't possibly be, right?
Oh, how fun.
It's very much like the original Pinocchio, like a wooden boy who walks and talks and eats, right?
Right.
And whose nose grows and all of these things. So it's kind of the same thing.
Is it his nose that grows?
No, of course not. It's an erotic story.
Noses can be erotic.
Right? So every time he breaks his promise to his boyfriend or cheats on him, it grows.
Oh, that's kind of
What's the implication of that, right?
right.
Yeah. So.
Oh, how fun!
Yeah.
Oh, I want to tumble down that rabbit hole all the way. That sounds great.
I can't wait to see how people react because it's very different for me, right? Because I don't usually write that kind of eroticism.
No, but you're not, because you're fictionalized, because you're writing a fictionalized,
And
so
somebody else writes the book.
Yeah. So you got a little step behind from that. That's kind of neat.
Yeah, but then the other piece that made it really fun for me was as I wrote that fictional, and it's that part of the book is called The Adventures of Testa da Casa. And Testa da Casa is Italian slang for dickhead. Which says a lot, right? But within that book, there's all of these breadcrumbs from the story that wraps around it. So the two young men stories kind of interwoven in that. And unless you're paying attention, you don't necessarily get it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's hard to write.
Yeah.
That's why it took me 13 and a half.
Yeah, it's tricky.
I think so that one was really hard because I had originally structured it differently. And there were different points of views. And at some point it wasn't working. So I stopped and rewrote it from a different perspective. And even going through the final edit pieces, sometimes the voices would change because I had switched so much and moved so much around.
Yep.
So it's actually a challenging book for me to edit myself. But I am so excited about it. Right?
Because when you look back after all that snipping and cutting and putting here and putting there, what a wonderful thing you've got then, right? Yeah.
Oh, that's neat.
Oh, that does sound neat.
Yeah.
One of my favorite works of yours all time that I go to, like, even when I'm just like bored and looking for something to read over and over again, it's your corporate story. That is
the corporatorium.
I
keep hoping it'll be the next Office or whatever the hell that show is.
Right? It's just so funny.
As things happen and trigger, right?
Yeah.
That's what always prompted. So all of those were based on real incidents. They might be slightly exaggerated, but they're all based on real things. Now it's a little bit different because I'm on the nonprofit side. So a lot of the stuff you see in corporate doesn't really happen, but then nonprofits have their own set of craziness, just to be clear.
But you're saying it different. It's a very different working in nonprofit than corporate.
It's really very different. I think for me, the struggle has been having grown up in corporate, right? Which is very structured and hierarchical, you know kind of what's going on, and there's a little bit more accountability. And the other piece is money, right? Like, while every corporation has run into problems, I came out of a $5 billion startup.
Right.
So money generally wasn't an issue. Whatever I needed to do, there was the money to do, right?
Gotcha.
Now it's like, okay, well, if you do this, then you can't do that. Which one is more important, right? And then how do you support programs and all of that stuff?
Yeah.
Right?
Is that shit you all had to learn new, or is that stuff that you might have had background in already?
So I thought I had background in it. One of the things that attracted me to this was I came out of a $5 billion startup where we built it up from the ground up, right? We had factories and plants and people, but we had to build HR, communications, all of that stuff. So I thought, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
But the way it moves in a corporate environment is very different to the way it works in a much smaller nonprofit.
Huh.
Right? It's just you would think the structure would be the same. I could just take that framework and overlay it.
Sure.
Right.
Not quite.
Oh.
Well, how does the decision making get done then? Is it just sort of this consensus you'll have to kind of?
Yeah, so it's a little bit more consensus driven than you would expect. Than I would have expected. And I think I tend to get into trouble because and it's probably because I'm a writer, right? Because I love writing because that's just all me, right? Until it goes to my editor, there's nobody else offering input or anything. So I'm very used to making my own decisions and say, this is the right thing and this is the story. And so I get told a lot that I'm not collaborative enough. You know, and I always find this happens in corporate too, like particularly the difference between like men and women sometimes is when people say, you don't listen to me, right? And you have to really unpack that, because for some people, you don't listen to me means you didn't do what I told you to do, what I said.
Right.
For me, listening means I listened to you. That was stupid. I'm not doing it.
Right. Yeah. There you go. I heard what you said. Yeah. I gotcha. And then maybe
Those kinds of very different interpretations and feelings.
yeah. Well, people keep telling us to go nonprofit with our little chugga over here, and we have no idea on what it would mean for us necessarily. But you know, that's a weird.
Well, I think you're in a unique position, right? If you go nonprofit, it's kind of yours, right? So you're the two who are leading it, and having kind of worked with you guys for a couple of years, right?
Yeah.
I see what you're going with your vision. Your vision is very clear, right? But you're also very open and flexible, right? So I think like working with a team like yours would be really a cool experience, right? So I think you all could really do it. I think it'd be successful. I mean,
so nonprofit isn't necessarily a pitfall. That could actually work.
Correct. Yeah, I think it could work for you. I think it's when you get into a larger agency with multiple departments and multiple directors and people like that, and then you've got the fundraising piece and all of that stuff is when it starts getting exponentially more difficult.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, we've been told the issue is that, you know, if it's the continuing the grant from year to year or finding another grant provider. So that's, you know, but I still think that that's the way to go. I don't think for a small newspaper advertising is, you know.
It shouldn't be, because we shouldn't be beholden to the people in the neighborhood. The people who have the most money are the developers, and we don't want the developers owning the paper. That would be kind of weird.
So yeah, I think once you have a solid grant writer, you know what kind of grants you're going after, then it gets easier. But there is always that pressure, like year after year, to bring in those grants, right?
There is.
Because typically, if you're not funded, then you can't do what you want to do, right? So it's just like not working. If you're not working, you can't go out and buy a new car or whatever, right? So you have to make sure you're working or money's coming in somehow. It's kind of the same mindset.
All right.
Yeah.
I've got a second one over there. I'd be prepared.
Yeah.
So, is happy hour? How do you are happy hours on a more regular basis these days? I know for us it is the reason I'm asking that question. I mean, we do a lot of drinking, so yeah.
So somebody talking to me the other week about what were your preparations for lockdown? And I was like, honestly, we didn't go buy like tuna fish or toilet paper. Stanley made a mad dash to the liquor store and bought a case of wine and 6 bottles of gin.
Priorities.
That's it.
That's the first thing we thought of. We heard the state stores were closing down like that Tuesday.
I remember that. There was a little bit of a rush. So God bless him. He's a smart thing. Good for you. Hang on to that, man.
We got it. And the other day, I was down at Baker Street, and I went to the supermarket, and I thought, oh, I'll just call the liquor store, right? And I called, and for the first time, they answered the phone. So I'm like, well, I need a bottle of gin, I need a little vodka, and I want wine. She said, what kind of wine do you want? So I go, oh, a red under $10. So she like sucked her teeth and said, hold on, and came back and said, I found something or other for $7.99. I go, yeah, that's fine. She goes, but if you want something, you need to tell me exactly what you want, because I don't have time to be running around the store looking for things. And I'm like, I don't know what I want. Is he walk in the store? And
Could you turn your phone? I'll call you on the cell phone. You can turn the camera around and just we can walk down the aisles. You know, that would be the ideal way.
And she goes, there are other people waiting. We only have one line. I'm like, what moron decided to do like order by phone and you only have one phone line?
It's like, it's at Marge's house. Oh, wow. No, they're not good at that.
I'm hoping that the state stores are going to open next week or this week. I guess next week, right after we go to phase yellow.
Was it Friday?
My brother.
Friday's yellow, I think, or supposed to be.
Yeah, the 5th, the 4th, 5th. My brother and his wife, they swear by this. This is their survival. So they call, or you can go online and you can order
Total Wine
online. load up your freaking cart. They'll pack it all up, and then you drive down to Delaware, which is like 40 minutes away, and they put it in your car for you.
Really?
And then you head back, and it's super cheap prices, no tax. So every time we buy from there, you save hundreds, like easily, right? Like at least $100.
It's a good amount you save, but it's also this. I
It's
mean,
a bit of a drive, but it's not that bad. It's a pretty easy ride.
it's the way you would think we would be doing things in the 21st century, and not calling your local state store. You know, it's just.
But they just love it. Once a month, they just go down there, and they just load the car up, and off you go. So technically, you're not allowed to. Because it's Pennsylvania.
I know they had said they were going to be cracking down on that because I was like,
she said that
crack down on that when you have closed the state stores in Philadelphia.
That's it. And she said like they tried it. They did like one day, but the stores down there, the total lines like yeah, no, because Delaware is like whee. So Delaware really does not have any real incentive to stop us.
No.
So that's the beauty of it. So people have been doing that. So I think that's really what we're going to try to do.
Yeah, I imagine that'd be Jersey too. I mean,
yeah, but they tax.
Should they have tax?
They're closer, but they have tax.
That's true.
Yeah, then there's a toll for the bridge.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's Jersey. Come on now.
Now you're scratching.
I'm gonna get a shower right now. Just saying. Oh no! I think we need another Bloody Larry.
Do.
I'm gonna make another Bloody Larry. You guys chat, and we'll figure out about reading. I'm almost ready to read. I'll need glasses.
It's gonna take days to edit this, isn't it?
Finding the best parts is going to be the hardest part of the whole thing. The Pinocchio thing is already at the top of the list as far as my book is concerned. But yeah, so what else? I mean, you said you sort of had that feeling that time kind of changed, obviously for all of us, it's like the same day, the Groundhog Day thing over and over again. But you're saying, I read on your blog that you were saying the dogs even seem to pick up on it. You seem to notice like a slowing in general. It seemed more like taking time to sort of smell the roses.
So I think that's been the interesting thing, and I love that part of this. What I love most is when I take the dogs out in the morning. And we run into people, and I can just stop and talk, right, without having to worry about making that train or which is the next train or anything like that. It's just made everything a lot easier. And the other thing is there's so many more people out. Like there's all these kids on our block who are all under the age of 5 that we've never seen. Because their parents throw them in the car and they rush them off to daycare or they're going to Little League or whatever. And so you only see the back of their heads as the car goes down the driveway. Now suddenly they're on the street with their bicycles. They want to say hi to the dogs.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a really,
it's
just a nice slowing down in a way.
Yeah. Does that affect your writing at all? This sense of time kind of shifting?
It affects it in the sense that, like, taking the train every day and walking to work and all of that stuff, I see so much and I see so many people. And that's always what inspires my writing, whether it's an actual character or scene or whatever. So I don't get that kind of, I don't have that input coming in. But in a way, it's kind of nice to kind of relax and not have something crashing through my head all the time.
Right, yeah.
So that's good. It's just been kind of a slower pace to think about what I want to do next. And just really kind of look around and just take some time to breathe.
Right. And does the hold on.
Oh,
thank you.
I'll be right back.
And does the you said the Lexapro sort of got you into a quieter headspace?
Yes. So I think for me with the OCD or the anxiety disorder, which mimicked OCD, I think it manifested in me as these constant obsessive thoughts. Right, about all kinds of things, and I would get looped into this circle, usually of something negative happening. Right, it's always like tragic or whatever. To the point where like getting on an elevator like would make me feel like I want to faint. If I went to my parents, it was just easier to walk up 24 flights of stairs than to risk getting on an elevator and having to feel like I'm going to die before I got to the 24th floor. And when they put me on it, it wasn't necessarily for that. It was for some other generalized symptoms.
Okay.
So that was just an unexpected side effect of the OCDC just kind of getting muted.
Mm-hmm.
And as I kind of went back and looked it up and talked to my doctor, they're like, yeah, that's an actual thing that does happen. Right. And so I started looking it up, and I came across a young woman who was an actress. I forget what her name was. And she had been diagnosed when she was 17, and she's been on Lexapro for like 10 years. Mm-hmm. And she was talking about how people talk to her, and she goes, she would rather die than stop taking Lexapro. Because that's how bad that kind of constant thought and that negativity and having to do these behaviors to cancel out the thoughts is just, it's just literally, it's debilitating. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, and because not something people talk about, you don't even know if it's real. You think it's just you, or maybe this is everybody's doing this. They're just dealing with it. Right. So, yeah, it's just.
Yeah. Did you feel you lost anything when that quieted down? I mean, is there, you know, as far as your, I'm sure that somehow played into your writing process. Do you feel like when you got that sort of quieting, did that change your, I don't know, approach or voice or any of that?
No, that was the biggest thing. That was my biggest concern, was this is going to affect my writing. I think what it has done is reducing the anxiety. Mm-hmm. When I'm actually writing, I'm not as anxious thinking, oh my God, this sucks, or I can't do this. Mm-hmm. Right. And that in turn is maybe more productive because I'm not wasting time second guessing myself or fretting that this is really terrible or whatever. And if something needs to change, I don't fret about it. I just go ahead and change it. Mm-hmm. So by reducing the anxiety of it, because it's always, the biggest anxiety producing thing for me was what is the effect of this, right? If I do A, then B will happen. And anticipating B was always worse than the actual reality of B. And that was, so it's why I hated driving, because I would be so anxious about the impending accident or running somebody over or whatever that was, that I hated getting in the car and driving anywhere. And sometimes driving to New York, it would be so bad that I'd have to pull over into a rest stop and sleep for like 45 minutes to like kind of get myself back together.
Using all that energy to focus. Yeah.
And now the last time I went to New York, I was up there in less than 2 hours. Drive that used to take me nearly 3, right? Because I was in the left lane doing like 55 miles an hour like this and shaking.
Yeah. Well,
like, this person's going too slow, but I can't merge. I can't change lanes, so I crashed the car. So that's been just phenomenal.
Right. Let me just stay here. I'll just stay here, and then I don't have to make any choices, and then you're just stuck in whatever. I mean, in it. Yeah, I totally get that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's frees up the headspace to think about other shit when you can quiet that sound, right?
Yeah, and it's amazing how. So for me, like, sound bothered me.
Mm-hmm. Ooh,
and I never realized
apple, like that kind of sound.
No, just sounds in general.
Okay.
Like usually when I'm in the house by myself, there's nothing on. Like I don't have the TV on or the radio or anything because I like the silence. And what I realized after this kind of OCD got suppressed was that the noise I was hearing was mostly in my head.
Wow.
So a TV playing on top of the sounds in my head made me insane. And now there's just the TV playing. It's like, oh, this isn't so bad.
That's so wild.
Yeah. I think the other thing, right, from working from home and with the Lexapro is that I was able to have enough time and mental capacity to go back to writing my blog, which had stopped for like a year just because it was too much or there were whatever. Yeah. So that's another kind of thing that I'm having some fun with.
Yeah. So we thought maybe you might be experimenting to get back to your older days when you had the fro or something. We didn't know what you.
No, I started letting it grow out. Right, I hadn't cut my hair for like 8 weeks. Stanley hated it, and I had started cutting my hair because it was thinning. Right, so I was being proactive, and so it kind of grew and kind of patchy. It's like, yeah, that fro's never coming back. That's way behind me.
And what was Stanley's thinking about him shaving his head? Was that just, what the hell?
So I think, so it happened because he was just giving himself a haircut and he cut the sides too close.
Oh, he made you one of those things to level it out?
And he came downstairs and we're sitting at the dinner table and he had all this hair on top of his head. I go, did I interrupt your cutting your hair? He goes, no, I'm finished. So I go, there's all that hair on top of your head.
No.
So he goes, I know. I go, I think that's really stupid. So he got mad and went upstairs and cut it all off.
Oh my God.
Just to spite you. Just to spite you.
I think it looks really stupid. You want to see stupid, Larry? Oh, I'll show you stupid. Oh, we're going there.
But it's growing in some. It doesn't, it looks pretty good, I think.
Yeah.
You look good. Actually, look good otherwise. So who are your fan people? Like when you get, have you been like who fangirls on Larry?
It's mostly straight women.
Yeah, weird.
It is weird, but I get a lot of, like, when I get written or people write me or reach out or whatever, it's usually straight women.
And what do they say?
So what people say a lot is that they've never thought of men thinking the way I when you read my book and you see what I think or how I'm thinking. They say they don't necessarily think about men thinking like that.
It's an emotional life of men.
Excuse me?
It's like the emotional life of men.
Right.
You're
the secret
giving
emotional life of men.
The emotional life of men.
But the one that I got written about most was in Unbroken, when Lincoln first meets Jose, and he's talking about what he looks like, and he talks about his Adam's apple. Yeah. And there's a fairly long passage just about his Adam's apple. And a couple of women said to me, "Oh my God, that was the most amazing passage. Like, do men really think about things like something as innocuous as an Adam's apple was just kind of erotic and like managed to articulate like his dream and what he was feeling?"
Sure.
And that's which I just wrote because that's kind of, I remember thinking that when I first met him, back when I was 12, and so I was surprised that resonated with so many people.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, that is something that a woman wouldn't necessarily, like women's literature would never go on about that, because when women write romance literature, the guy is usually secondary, right? They talk about the women's clothing and how the woman feels and how he's treating her, but you don't really think of the guy himself as the object. He's more like the foil for the woman's passions and whatever. So when you get to read your literature, you get both. You get the emotional component from the male point of view as well, which is fascinating.
Yeah. But I think that's what surprised a lot of people, is that it's so emotional.
It is.
Right? And it's like, yeah, men are emotional, I assume. I mean, I don't know.
Have to be. You're human.
Even when men write romance or a story that has a romantic, it's always the woman is centered as a sexual object, right?
Always.
And then sometimes not thinking about the fact that when you're attracted to somebody, it's not necessarily just about the sex or about their chest or their shoulders, right? It's about these innocuous things, their eyes, maybe the shape of their mouth or something, right? It's just, there's always something you can think about that's not necessarily just the sexual piece, right? But it kind of underscores that emotion and what it is that makes that special person special to you, because you're really kind of looking at them and seeing them.
I can totally get that.
Yeah.
It's the way you write. It's not just your subject matter, obviously, it's how you write. So
it's kind of how I see people, right? It's how I want people to experience the characters, right? And it's kind of interesting how people have really kind of bonded to some of the characters, right? Like they feel that they're real people and they really know them. And I still get stuff in Unbroken. The first guy that Lincoln kind of has a relationship with when he's a teenager is Billy, maybe? Oh crap, I can't believe I forget his name. It's the guy who ends up going to the army.
Okay.
And it's just this, they have this interlude, right, where they have this relationship, and then the kid goes off to the army, never sees him again. And people keep writing me and saying, he was so important to me. Can you tell me what happened to him, right? Or is there going to be a book that focuses on him? And I'm like, I had never thought more about him other than the fact he came into Lincoln's life, he made a difference, and he kind of went away, right? And so many people kind of, that's what I get most from that book, is what about whatever his name was, I'm sorry.
What about Dude?
Yeah, what about Dude who went off to the army? I'm like, what about him?
Well, yeah, but I guess there's a story there too, you know? Give people what they want, but you know, you are giving people what they want. And this new book is going to be more challenging than the others, because it was all, sounds like a lot of layers, a lot of viewpoints, a lot of juggling, but it's the same kind of story, right? It's a love story and all that sort of good stuff.
But and this one is kind of stripped down to just the absolute defining moments in these two kids' lives, right? So there's nothing really extraneous every like section of the book or every sequence, and there's a lot left unsaid which you have to kind of fill in for yourself, but it's just really about those moments that create your life or that motivates you, right? Or that leads you to the next thing.
And like you're saying, even sometimes the guy goes off to the army, that's the role he plays in your life, in the main character's life. You know, you don't know what happened to him, but
right. And in real life, right, you had a friend in high school, you went to college or whatever, and you never saw each other again. And you don't necessarily spend a whole lot of time thinking about what happened to them, right? They were there and then they weren't, and that's kind of the way it is.
Yeah, yeah. And what's the play where it's the two characters from Othello, where he flips it around, the minor characters?
Othello, or are you talking
No,
about?
not Othello. It was
Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, where they take the Stoppard, I think it was. They take the minor characters and make them the
that was fun.
point of view.
Yeah, that was kind of an interesting exercise for them. I mean, to do that.
Sure.
Because Rosencrantz and Guildenstern were just these like shadowy figures who kind of floated through.
Behind the curtains.
Right. Yeah.
That was fun. That was a good movie.
It was.
Are you doing that movie challenge that everyone's doing, making you post like 10 movies and that influenced you or that you liked, and you have to share them on your Facebook page and then
No, I hadn't actually seen that one, and I probably haven't seen 10 movies.
Oh, right? That's what I was like, I don't like movies. They take.
Somebody was asking me how the staying at home thing or the lockdown has kind of impacted our lives, right? It's like, well, honestly, not a whole lot outside of the liquor store being closed, right? Because we just didn't go out to dinner a whole lot, right? We really went to movies. So usually we're here, and I can still walk the dogs and stuff. So that social piece, I miss seeing my mom, I miss seeing my nephews, but the rest of it is like not that much has changed.
Right. You can do the work that way,
Yeah, and I'm always at home. I like being home. So I don't necessarily miss anything, really.
Yeah, it's the same with us. We're actually mostly home. I mean, it's not a whole lot that changes. We do a lot of our work here, and it hasn't changed.
Right. Do you have to go back to work when everything opens again, or no?
Yeah, they're saying when we hit the green phase, I guess. So because we're a health care facility, we're open, right, for patients and stuff, limited patients. But like because I'm administrative staff, we'll probably be the last ones to go back. I do go in like once a week to check mail and do all of that stuff. But pretty much there's no reason for me to physically be in the office every day.
And this has been Local Live with author Larry Benjamin. Thanks for making time for us, Larry. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for hanging out with me. This has been really great fun. I look forward to meeting with you guys again.
Excellent. Take care now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.